This at one time was beautifully preserved. Did someone once a year come and scrub it and keep it clean? No. One of the best sites, recognised sites in the whole of New Zealand, and this is what we are. Closed track, no signage, have to find it. Great fence, great fence. I marvel at the fence, but that's about all. And what a shocking state. And now this is the signage, left and right, and we've put pictures here, and if you we'll revisit it later, but I advised on this is basically my narrative, and with this, and it's from my class group, Kumatawa, to be there and approve with it. Left for the afternoon, we're going to call in at the Runanga Ngati Tahu Ngati Whaoa, and the logos Ngati Tahu Ngati Whaoa are here. We've just been to the office, and it's clearly seen on this side, Te Runanga Ngati Tahu Ngati Whaoa, and all these lands go right here over toward Murupara in the original awards. And where we're going to is offices going down the road toward Murupara, and we tend to meet 1 or 2 representatives there, and from there we're going to the famed carvings of the Waka carvings, which were considered one of the most important North Island, if not New Zealand, and just from there, just to see we can find. Formerly it took one person 3 hours to find, and we're hoping to do it in lesser at that time for the remaining hours of the day. And from there we'll give some brief explanation of the historic context of the cave. You had the mother, Tahu. She had her places. She had her places here, cultivations, kind of. Nowadays, we're looking to find a roofing or a wire strip.
There's a couple of old blades that are lying around there, a couple of old silver blades. Yeah, but yeah, fuck them.
That looks amazing.
If you get every house, you go for a little walking in the bush and then carvings all over.
Joe Kim. Oh, and he's
And I was fortunate because
he carves wood.
when the plant was in 1927, put a radius around, and the people even same distance overland to TeWhare, they had.
The red marker. Okay. I can hear a car coming. Woohoo, we found it. Sure, Kiwi. Cool. No idea which way to go.
See the transfer seals. This road is a new one. The old road went like a phase road, understand the south. But the present maps haven't got this. They've got about 800 metres out from where it is. So we're relying on a map and do a coordinate. You're all over the place. Jeffrey, would go ahead. This place was considered one of the great heritage sites in New Zealand. The Frenchman said that an information person, guide at hand, properly signed and conducted, and this may be in Europe or anywhere, be all properly done. And what have we got? They take German tourists and that all the way, staggering from the Rotorua airport, shove them in the bus, Ngati Manua, charging the earth, and then bring them here along the stoat track, and then tell them their stories that they did not have several years ago until. But this is on the line near a division, a place called Peka Peka, and the line went straight across in the Ngati Tahu Awards Whaoa people I've just introduced you to, and was 100% in their awards, and this is part of the old ancient lines. And in 1927, when they foresters were doing their planting, they reported to the office, and the office man then inspected it and thought, well, this is important, got to the telegraph office in Rotorua, and then they got Serengi to Roa, Sir Peter Buck, to come in, and he may as well have been digging potatoes. Ngati Manawa knew nothing about it. Of course they didn't know anything about it. They were only passed through briefly before they were 400 years in the ranges, 400 years, had no knowledge of any of these places. Had they gone to the people whose descendants I've just introduced you to, they would have got the stories and some knowledge of these places. And to this day, these people, they don't commercialise it, and if they did, they'd have it a better thing for on tourist thing. It was graded from 1950s when we had vandals come in. So, well, when I say vandals, graffiti people, bush workers and yard hunter. But taking from there, a person from France, Jan Pierre, what's his name? He was an actual guide at the big caves in France, and he's horrified about the Philistinian ignorance of people not promoting it. Now you're getting the picture, place after place I'm taking you. Why are they so hidden? Why are they so silent? What's the big cover-up? It might be a question of whose history, might be who's pushing the boards and the buttons in high places to keep these things secret. But I'll carry on the story. We'll go further. No. There should be no moss. I'll tell you the story about that. Should be. I'll tell you a story about that. I'm going to get my own thing. I'm going to put a new lock on and everything else. Now, what do you see?
I see some spiral hidden behind moss. A spiral waka there. There's lots of waka basically. And
if you come down, this is the best preserved section here. You see a little bit of kukawai trace on the above the lozenge.
yes.
Oh,
And that represents waves. Represents waves. But you see the graffiti that's chopped in above, and graffiti on the side. 1970.
Yes.
And this is this. And they go back to 1951. This is where people with the graffiti and that have started to encroach. Why is this better preserved than that? These waka.
I know.
Because of the shade
No.
and the moss.
The dripping.
No. These were beautiful there with their spirals and that, as well preserved as that. If I gave money to a vandal and say, go ahead, vandalise it, he wouldn't have done the damage that was done here.
And what's caused it?
Department of Conservation is responsible for the erasing of all this. They were going to make great things, great fanfare, great publicity, and what they did, oh, there's some fern in that. We'll protect it in any moss. We'll put great boards across this section. Didn't do a trial thing or nothing, and leave it for 2 years, and the darkness will kill the moss. 2 years later, they pulled the boards back, and all the delicate carvings, the spiral, that all fell away with it. The boards. Department of Conservation, 100% responsible for ruining one of the best sites, and it was just as good condition as this.
So why didn't they just put wet and forget on it or something like that?
Oh, no, I've just got all the material, all the information on that. After that mismanagement, that total bit of vandalism, courtesy 100% Department of Conservation, what it done 2 years, it got saturated, soaking wet, and the soft material adhered to the boards, pulled it off, and that is why their responsibility was then, Department of Conservation, we won't let anyone find out about this, we'll close the lot altogether, not to public or anything, we'll completely ban anything from going. And then I had to ring the forestry and that, and go through Rotorua, and found that yes, I could go. And we had this reopened. That was part of the cover-up. This sign here, when they put it in, tells you the history of the carvings. Now look at it.
Ngati Manawa have held something in the area since about the 16th century.
Yes. Now this, and I'll see how that's been let go. On top there has got a picture of Sir Peter Buck with a spade. They only went to Ngati Manawa, and they got a misinformation. And how did you neglect a sign with a place like this? This at one time was beautifully preserved. Did someone once a year come and scrub it and keep it clean? No. One of the best sites, recognised sites in the whole of New Zealand, and this is what we are. Closed track, no signage, have to find it. Great fence, great fence. I marvel at the fence, but that's about all. And what a shocking state. And they bring people from the Europe and that, Ngati Manawa, to make up their stories. Make up, I emphasise that, wasn't even in the awards, original awards. And to take the tourists through the goat track to come here, straight from the plane, when they've seen sites worldwide that have had the best of attention and recognition and guides and everything else. Anyway, that's detracting from us, us here. But no fence necessary for vandals. But see the beautiful spirals there, still preserved.
Oh,
On the Waka.
yes, I see them.
And those big ones on that side had all the spirals and patterns just as well preserved.
Yes,
I've seen
them in photos.
Don't tell me that Department of Conservation, it's an obscenity. Its name should be rewritten in the dictionary definition after they get involved with things like this.
So nothing can be done now, can it?
Oh, it's destroyed, ruined. I'd give a vandal, I'd say, give you $500. And you'll say, no, I'm a vandal, but I at least respect the culture. I won't do it. To the Department of Conservation.
Yeah, someone spent a long time doing these. They weren't done overnight.
Oh, no, but because Ngati Manawa, shock horror didn't know it existed, and then the design of the Waka shows these people went inland, went entrenched inland as a small group. Going up the river. Now I'll keep quiet for a moment, but I'll let you relook from end to end, and then I'll ask you your views, impressions of it.
there's a few places with kokowai markings on them.
Now the main part here, that would have been the original fire half and that at the back. And that's where at one time you could clearly see a few kokowai dots and applications here.
It's interesting that the whole cave is dominated by one central theme, which is Waka. You know, there's a face, I've seen a face there, but that looks like it's a modern face. It doesn't look like it's an old face.
That face is more of a modern one.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of kokowai dots near it by it.
And I haven't seen those stripe pattern, you know, that's quite a unusual early mouldy pattern, eh? The sawtooth or whatever it is.
And that,
Wave.
that represents the waves.
Yes.
One of the oldest symbols in the world. The Egyptians had it for water. The same sort of symbols. Since then, dockers put spray and that over to try and kill the moss. But we didn't have moss until their first attempts.
Jared was saying, like in the biggest cave and or most famous rock art cave, which is the Opigi Taniwha cave, they planted 30,000 plants in the gully all down there, and it may look fantastic, but when they grow up like this, they're going to shade that whole, he said they'll shade that entire cave, and then the moss will
That's
take
right.
over.
When I've seen have to put trees, no. In the forest I've urged for so many metres back to clear trees, not plant trees.
Yeah,
Have everything.
so to keep the
And
light
I had one idiot
strong.
plant trees within the cave that would have only gone this high, pine trees, but to get their quota they planted lines of trees within an overhang,
Oh, okay.
which would never go to maturity, just silliness.
Yes.
Look, I deal with, whether it's planters or anyone, I don't deal with common sense or logic at all.
I can still see a lot of stuff underneath that moss, eh?
Oh, but it's all deteriorated. It's all washed
away.
away. The main themes here, when you can imagine how they were sharp as those.
Amazing.
That's Department Conservation. Not to do with nature.
What a boo-boo.
Now they won't admit to them, in spite of my records and their publicity and patting themselves on the back how clever they were. But these are the same people have had run-ins too, regarding the recognition, proper registration, proper processes. So it's your little excursions with me are wow.
Oh,
It's a mixture of joy and
Yes, dismay.
now what a shocking thing to take the tourists, worldwide people,
Yeah.
for the information here.
You show how much you love a taonga by how you look after it.
Mm.
And they're showing that they don't love
But
their
they
taonga.
catch in with busloads of tourists, or pre-lockdown, a bus straight from Rotorua International Airport, straight to come here, nowhere else, and say, oh, look at us, aren't we clever?
And no cultural connection to the
No,
arts
no
or to
cultural.
the people.
But they're making up things. One of my former students was here with a couple of people, and one of them they mentioned today, Harry, and he was here when they brought him in, and he was so wild with what they're telling them, and he was quite outspoken, but the other person said, oh no, you know, they're Ngati Manawa, but don't say this, don't do that. It's the same, go to museum, or we're friends with the people now, don't say anything to museum, and yet it's worse under their watch than it's ever been. So it's, you know, with the displays and the lack of information and all the pictures taken down in the TeWhare gallery, genuine pictures.
Yeah, that was a big disappointment.
So it's a good thing they went there, so you'd be telling them off. Now, your impression here, Big Waka,
Yes.
basically the same thing, just as finely done, but more of the wave patterns here, and it's an added process of time. But I want to give you now an impression. My own one was where the original sitting was here, and that's what you could one time see a few little ochre applications done here. I think the spraying too has started to remove some of the finer Kilkawai marks. And but when you come this side, the rock is harder. The rock is harder on this side, and the designs on harder rock do, if you examine them, somehow mix a little bit over there, but you've got a fine spiral pattern chiseled. You can see one there. I think there are two of them. And
what do you think's made the chisel marks? Was it Pounamu chisel or?
oh, it doesn't have to be Pounamu. Anything that's harder than the rock they're working, but here they've been carefully and deliberately etched out. But this, I believe, this end is the original end, harder rock, and applied there, and then and ended up right to the other side, much bigger ones, and the designs of the ones at the far end do differ. The Waka, if you compare, I've sketched them all out end to end, scale sketched them. And I've taken photos over many years with the various changes.
Wow, so you'd have quite a good...
And that's before I got the before after of that shocker.
Yeah.
There.
Before the Department of Conservation came, after they left.
I tend to talk too much because I've been so involved over the years with the different groups. But when we came to that Runanga office, he said, Tahu said, "Oh, Maru's cave." Now, why did he say that? He's a tutor from Rotorua in advanced Te Rero, so he took my class of elders over, sat in last week, and then it was he that I turned my class over for a year, 12 months advanced Te Rero instruction. But anyway, I just mention this, and I write it, but this is concerning the whakapapa. This place is called ANA A MARU, Kangaroo place names, and this is a name given to rock shelter with a series of canoe carvings, recorded site number. I've got the metric V 17.3 rock shelter has been subject to an early excavation. Well, the excavation was like digging potatoes. That was under they were keen to dig everything out to get to the bottom to try and see if there's a pre-Maori people or someone here. It's one of those nutty ideas because the locals couldn't tell them anything, so if they can't tell us, it must be someone else. And for someone else, it can't be Maori, it must be someone before the Maori. Therefore, we'll dig up, ruin the whole cultural layers and values, apart from finding some pipi and hangi stone. They found absolutely nothing to prove anything. And the name Te Ana A MARU literally means a cave belonging to Maru, or Maru's cave. Maru's mentioned early evidence given Maori land court. He was a brother of Karaka, descendant of Tahu. Others may dispute this on the basis of the lineage, given and argue for Torua being the ancestor. Torua is connected with Whakatane and direct descendant of Whakatane, and whose daughter was Wairaka. And Wairaka's monument stands at Whakatane, at the headland out there on the hill. And from Hiniwai Kuatu going to Irihanga and Te Whaoa. And the other lines here connect to Maru and Karaka. Now Maru and Karaka, the ancestry, connects with Whakaipo Bay and right through all these lands, right through here. So when I'm on different parts, I mention similar people that all connect with the land. And then Paporo is a feature in the Western Bays, a landmark out there, and others, Tarama. And Tarama's had all the lands here, I said earlier, with his two of his four wives were from Maru and Karaka. That's got all the lands back around here. Genealogy for the early period suggests small groups intermarrying and as a hunter-gathering ranging across a wide area until the early part of the 17th century, when the group's encroachment from other districts, after this alliances were made and tribal consolidation in the region took place. Contesting for resources, land and slaves saw more war parties through the district. Kangaroo rock carvings, large Waka or canoes, what I see as the later phase of the art, depicts familiarity with large spiral carved river, either Waikato or coastal vessels. So that's just a brief to this. We have got some other stories connecting this area of certain war parties and the locals here. So the only other place that had so many carvings of boat-like themes was at Ruahuata. That's the place by the Full James Rapids, and that had about as many relief things that were designs that were interpreted also as boats or waka.
Or vaginas, Gerard said.
Well, I said that to Gerard.
Oh, did you?
Yes. Don't think Gerard's suddenly...
Oh, well, him and Jeffrey stayed up for an hour just talking about vaginas.
Well, we're experts.
Oh, you are, I suppose.
But they do seem to reflect that. And it seems to be a missionary thing when it became a big deal for Maori. Chisel away off the carvings and any such offensive things that offended the missionaries, of course.
Yes. No erect penises, thank you. We're British.
Face there with the tongue. It seems to be a more recent addition.
Oh no, Māori would make a face like that.
And there's a couple of over here. See here, you see a couple of open marks. See the finger mark dips.
Yes.
That's like your dead dots and dashes.
I wonder why they were what they were.
That's standing height.
Signifying.
And the factors are not generally or applied, and they're put there. That was a deliberate application of the two marks over the designs there.
Yeah, they certainly drilled it deeply in. Hey, those are deep. Marks. Very enthusiastic. Rock carvers.
It's done in a very classical. I'd rather have that covered over when people from overseas that come here praise us one of the great places in New Zealand.
And then they say
come
that.
and see this dog's breakfast.
Yeah.
It's,
It would only take one person once a year to come in here.
I know. I would have done it if I had a key, just for my own time. And this is why the Department of Conservation, I found, had no authority here, nothing here apart from the big thing. They're doing that mess and walked out of it. As soon as I found they had no authority, no gazetted land and that aside, I overthrew the whole thing, the challenges, and I, thanks to Ngati Manawa, how are they coming in? They don't give a thought that of all the work and hard work and that went up to it. But anyway.
Who put up the fence? Was that Ngati
Oh,
Manawa?
no, forestry. Ngati Manawa doesn't spend a cent. This was put up by the forestry people, not Department of Conservation, not any group. It's part of the forestry people themselves.
What is?
And that's when they had the key. And in the end, in the forestry with the leasing off all lands to the overseas, they then took the key to that gate that they had in the office, went to Rotorua and dropped it off to someone. Oh, you're Ngati Manawa, here's the keys for this. What a joke. That was years ago.
This hasn't been opened in years.
No, but
It's rusted solid.
yes, I know, I'll deal with it.
That won't even open now.
I know,
Need another key.
I know, but I'll deal with it. But then I've had concern here. But
So for future kaitiakitanga, what guardianship things could be, do you think, put in place other than keeping it clear of moss, keeping the undergrowth back? Is there anything you think would help other than keeping conservation department out?
well, the conservation department aren't in it now. The no, I'd have, if this is going to be done properly, and the fact is they're bringing tourists, the Ngati Manawa are bringing tourists worldwide by the busload, for money, and
not doing anything for the
no,
actual
so
site.
to me the office is the one key one down there, and the promotional things, and get a proper management thing in here, because they are due on the return of lands in probably about 15 years or so now from the lease lands. Because I think Tahu said to you about being leased.
Yeah, they don't own these. Well, they own the land, but they're all
Yes,
leased
the
out,
land.
so they can't control what happens
No.
here at the moment.
Leased to,
An American university, and they bought the whole forest for their investment retirement funds
Oh,
from people in the United States.
good for them. How does
So
that even happen?
it's all loss of hundreds of jobs, and now they're only going harvesting bit by bit as needed, not necessarily replanting and that. So it's Americans' interest solely in the dollar for their investments, for the retirement funds. And Harvard, I think it's Harvard Universities for their this is one of their investments is forestry, the lands of their trees. Yes, I don't think we as New Zealanders have any benefit. Yes. Now, Sabine Buckingham says, no water in the middle of nowhere. No, they're unaware of the village up near the Kaingaroa village, the old one, the adzes were suddenly all given to Ngati Manawa. Oh, what's this? What's happened to those? But I did find only ones who walked the land. I did find less than 200 metres away a little creek just down from the site. It's Peter Buckingham said, no water, nothing there. But he had big coal shovel-like spades and was digging blazes out of the place to try and find non-Maori artefacts, because Ngati Manawa, who he was misdirected to contact, didn't even know this existed. So if they didn't know, it must be pre-Maori. And if it's pre-Maori, we'll get the best person of the day, the ethnologist, Peter Buck, and he dug the blazes out of this.
Have
No,
they
there
been
was no
carbon dated, these carvings?
Look, Peter Buck 1920s, such things didn't exist.
So it's never been carbon dated.
Carbon dating or anything. He destroyed the levels that would have given the carbon and the actual context of things here to get both the context and the samples and that carbon dating. But
because it's proven to be a very hard thing to do for all the Te Waiponamu rock artists to carbon date it. Every sample they've tested's come back as crayon, which is pretty sad. It means every single
well,
one.
with this, if this had been touched, we would have got we would have possibly gotten context, even with the chippings from their carvings, in context of ash layer or something to get accurately carbon dated. But in those days, such things didn't exist. It was just artefacts, mostly digging artefacts for museums and things.
They didn't find any here, apart from pippy shells.
And hungy stone. You see one lying on the edge there. They were
I
just
do.
completely discarded, and that could have been in the context of a fireplace half. That could well have been be accurately dated. I know. It wouldn't be much for me. Yeah. But then I've got a photo when that was put in. It was in pristine condition.
A lot of the signages I've noticed on things, they don't stand up very well over time. You know, within 5 years, they're looking pretty shabby.
Apart from that, to look out at the landscape before pre-pine trees, and this is still a bit of a clearing round here, and this is a midpoint between Murupara and say Rainbow Mountain area, midpoint, and there was certain ranging for the people. These midpoint places without out up to 10 kilometres from each other, and places were harvested like Lake Rutakawa. Ducks were taken to Whakaito Bay, and in a straight line it's about 10 kilometres. Araki Karako, which is about 30 kilometres round by the going by the river, overland's only about 10 kilometres almost to TeWhare and places like that.
I'm sure some of these are in good condition underneath that.
No, I took a photo
This one,
before
yeah.
that, but a lot were lost. You've got little bits and pieces.
Because I can still see where the moss is, you know, like covering over the spirals, and they would still be under there, the spirals. If the moss was killed, it would reveal them.
They have sprayed to inhibit the growth. Initially, what they did was to make the moss come rampant. See, you're not really getting the moss over there, are you?
Right.
And you didn't really have the moss the same. It's only when they started spraying and doing things.
So if these little standard pungas weren't here, there would let a lot more light into this area. I mean, that's where all the light's been swallowed up.
The picture I got of Peter Buck taken down there, all this is quite open. There's no trees, there's no pung or anything.
Yeah. It's something really to consider, isn't it, for the preservation of the rock art is the undergrowth.
Anyway, you've seen something. I've kept you way too long.
Past our dinner time now. Shall we go?
Sure.
Light it up.
signposting. Well, this is reality. The people are there, the resources are there, the money are there, but the will's not there.
No. Or the love for the other.
And the Frenchman, Jean Pierre, he told me in Europe this would be really promoted, really stand out. You know, you got done with South Island sites.
Yes. It's because tourism's almost a dirty word, it would seem, for Māori, or some Māori, not for Tahu. We love tourism, but they haven't embraced it up here in the same way.
Well, as I say, I can only put it down over the years to the altitude and the water, what's in the water we drink. Because there's no reason working with Maori people, north, south coast and South Island, I don't get the same type of responses. Well, that's the long road I was thinking of. It was just past there, past this elbow. That's the elbow, the bend I was talking about. The side past there. I've been to 1,200 compartments on this forest. Personally inspected 1,200, and that's one of them.
Well, that must have taken you a while.
It did. And I put in planting things for 15 years to 25 years. Planting recommendations and different things.
How do you mean it's all planted at the time?
Well, it's the Harbour Forest piece. Before that was, when I was doing this, it was run by Fletcher's. Fletcher's.
Yes.
And then the whole lot was sold out to Harvard's. And now it's a minimum of wage, minimum of workers and contractors, and it's sort of just ticking over. All the section here on our left of us, this road, went to the Ngati Award, and the area south of Kaingaroa, the Kaingaroa number 2 block, 100% of it went to Ngati Tahu. But the people up here have some interest. And over by Rainbow Mountain, there's a little bit of an overlap there with TeWhare from Arawa.
I noticed in that map in there at the centre, that's got other than just those tribes in there, because Ngati Te Kōhira has whenua in those very places within that boundary that I was looking at. From my reading of maps.
Ngati Te Kōhira we're down the western bays.
Yes.
Right up from Pikawa, north of Pikawa, and particularly going up to toward the Powakani blocks, and they were in the Tatua blocks. But
and Whangamata.
But Ngati Te Kōhira weren't in the awards of this particular part.
Okay. Yeah, we tried to find out, in that Whakaipo Bay Reserve, we tried to find out whose it was, who was entitled.
What do you think? Why do you think there's smoke up ahead?
It's like it's dust on the road.
Maybe another car doing a flip.
Maybe trucks coming out of the
Forestry.
forest. Okay.
It should be a bit damp from too much dust. That's the Kaingaroa village.
like a drink?
Oh, risk it.
Yeah. Jeffrey, would you like a drink? You might have to wipe it.
Right.
Thank you.
As I say, 1,200 compartments. There's 1,700. So 500 I haven't had the time to finish covering for the entire estate.
So you have to painstakingly walk back and forth.
Back and forth. It's like East Taupo arterial. It's about, about 17k. And I've crisscrossed back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So multiply that for about 100 times. And that's the sort of coverage I give on the lands.
So you're working off a GPS to make sure you're going
I have a compartment map and a physical map from road to road, area to area,
Oh yeah.
block piece to block piece. Remember, I'm not dependent on any of that because I'm inch to the mile with compass and pre GST and all that. I've done all the kindling forests, Tahu, right through, and Western Bay Forest. Haven't quite finished quite the other side of the Whaoa forest, but it's not walking once, it's systematically analysing, investigating, and crisscrossing over.
That'd be a beautiful place to walk through the Whaoa forest because it's a lovely native forest.
Well, one of the blocks I did a thorough count on both native and exotic was a Pukimakuiti block, and then the Roa blocks. So I've done reports and groundwork and all for that, and then I've been over blocks over toward Tolmoranui.
Make it a lot easier going over them when the trees are just planted.
Well, I always try to insist on trying to do first before second planting, harvesting and planting, and there would be something to salvage or something to find, it's still intact.
So much of the land is destroyed when the pine trees come down, though. They just, the moment the skidders have been through pulling all the logs out with their wire strops,
Well,
there's virtually a desert left behind, nothing.
Well, what
growing.
destroyed the land was certain areas like off toward Montino, where they feed bladed all the ground. So they dug deep trenches and they threw things on one side so the heaps would have trees planted over, and it completely destroyed the landscape. Anything they'd done like that for kilometres, I said it was just a waste of time be going in.
certainly in the middle of nowhere. Those caves. Te Ana A Maru, Te Ana A Maru. Is it A Maru or O Maru?
We
Te
had,
Ana A MARU.
A Maru.
when I tried to get people into Opera's original claims, all they said, the officer, oh, that's far too far. I said it wasn't too far for the old people to walk it, to get there. Too much hard thing getting your vehicles, you know, up the modern roads. I'm on a different mindset, aren't I?
Yes. You're a Waka.
Where were you thinking of stopping?
At the place
Centre.
we stopped at this morning,
Centre.
and we'll just do a little intro of where we are going to.
You don't want to do it at Rainbow Mountain at the
Sure.
shelter there.
Yes.
Because
Is there a
that's
shelter there?
Yes, I arranged for the.
Oh, sure.
I arranged for the walkway, arranged for the where the postman for the long drop was, and the thing there.
So what is that Rainbow Mountain? What kind of shelter is it? Just a
Oh, you'll that's a shelter coming through its way to the little lake.
Is it like an old shelter or is it a modern construction?
No. It's got me in the photo of me in my class group.
Ah.
And, I took. Oh no, some tourists took a photo of me in the class group out there.
So do you want to stop here?
I will go over a
Nope.
couple about 4 kilometres further.
Okay.
We've got another one.
Ngati Tahu e Ngati Whaoa.
Whaoa.
That was a marriage link about 1600, took place about 1600. Another group of over Tumanui way, they're quite separate whakapapa and distinct lineage. There we go.
Ata. Apa.
So they'd just been to the top of the mountain, we just caught them.
So the carving's up there where that little fuddy is.
Yes. They'd have to go through lock gates, drive up there. He's just used to walking, so. And the quarry over there, I arranged for the permit, okay, for that. The one was at Okaraka, Lake Okaraka, and after working 1940s, I remember them working there in 1940s. The one that at the same group got new quarries here. So that's a new quarry. Quarries completely laid out. When the lakes are doing report holders down over there on that side. Plus the lake walked around.
do you think?
That's why I've just, for Environment Waikato, done a brief narrative for all the lakes around here, and the values, and I've just been asked to just put a sentence or two to add the wider links of people and movements and that. But this, as I say, there was a settlement down here, battleground site here, battle was fought, and just round the corner, not on top of the hill, but round the corner and the rising ground, there was a Ngati Whaoa park. Also there's the ridges on the other side past battleground. There's a lake. The lake's got some of the street to it, and I want to post-harvest inspection because I believe the whole top of the ridge was used for cultivation, and I've located a terrace on a forest site at the distilled end to a Landcorp block. I could have had the whole Landcorp block assigned and relocated to as part of the settlement claim, and then there was a chance of having it being bought with settlement claim money, this whole Landcorp block. But no, one or two trustees, they were just too timid to acquire it. And, so it's this weakness of an informed, decisive decision that still have lost the opportunity of getting back land banked land.
And that doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't happen. The whole Kawa blocks on the other side, I tried to 20 years or so ago persuade chairman of the blocks around here to get 2 weeks to get it and put an interest into land banking, but no, it's timid trustees. They wanted a little quarter acre here and there that was just used for roadside dumps. But having 1,000 or thousands of hectares given to them was just too much for them to take in. And it wouldn't cost them anything to put in claim. So I did draft something, and I stood over and got the person to sign other signatories for the Kaingaroa claims. But they missed the opportunity of a 40,000 acre claim, 40,000 acre claim that would have seen it entirely secured. So
Yeah, what a waste.
I've advised people to be gifted what would be hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's too much to their thinking to see, to do this in that process. And I've had officer treaty settlements say, yes, you do it this and that way, and there's no trouble, no contest, and you've got it.
Well, they certainly got some bad advice then.
Well, it was just the way they were thinking. And so in a small way, you were saying, why haven't they, if this important site, they don't listen to protect it? advise the right thing to do, which I have done. Those two hills over there, peaks of hills, one was Pukemorimori, and I've been on those part of the hills I've been on too, and they were important places connecting up to the Pyro range. Thermal springs in there too, inland there. But I think GNS science people are dithering over what's the correct Maori name. And I told them the name after local Maoris told them the name. And so people feel quite slighted that people being born, raised in the area, tell these people from these departments the name, and then it might not be right because it disagrees with our map. So we still get these funny political correctness going on right here and now. The Marai's down there, Matarai Marai, and Evelyn Forrest, who you met, she just lives in the house there. It's American.
That building that we were in just before, has that recently been returned to that?
Can you turn down the heating, Jeffrey? I'm just sweating in the back here.
I've had quite a few years now. I took a photo of the opening of it. Yes.
Oh, so it was originally built for them. That's
No. That was just a remnant of what's left. It got the fire engine part next, and there were a lot of buildings around.
Oh, that was an old fire station.
No, the fire station's still over there. That was the building to one side. It's still operational. That's the fire station. But these were the part of the building for the headquarters for the forestry. So Fletcher's, that was their forestry headquarters.
Right.
Headquarters there. So I used to go there for years. It was to deal with forests and other management. And they were dealing a lot with Ngati Manawa, extension of forest going right back over to Minganui. So I'd sometimes go out with forestry people to point out things to Ngati Tawhare, Ngati Manawa, and
Ngati Te Whare.
Ngati Tawhare. Ngati Tawhare's at Murupara, because you're Tawhare. And I worked with certain Tawhare families, and then I want to point out the sites of significance, but they dithered around, and any last records they had in the forestry office were all dumped and ditched, and the people I was speaking to, and they didn't want to know about it. I said, well, don't come to me in 15, 20 years, these sites will be lost. So I go all the way from Taupo to Murupara, and then miles inland toward Minganui, and point out this and that, just to be met by indifference about the old Para and Nurupara and different places.
I'm just gonna keep filming until my battery runs out. So
More recently, as we're coming round the corner, there's a rock and a gravel pit on the roadside, and they were going to bulldoze it out and remove it about 12 months ago. So I pointed out the one at Waitanui on the roadside, and I said, you don't touch that until you remove the one at Waitanui, which is next to Urupara, Vera, rises off the side toward the river here. And so I'm still proactive. I have to be eyes and ears still in the districts, in the wide districts. I was just past the sign here at Big Rock, and they're going to remove that rock as a roadside hazard.
Oh wow, wow.
That one.
Wow.
You know, so I sent information, one at Waitanui by the Urupā, and
That big red scoria rock.
No, it's outside the motel.
That's the big scoria rock.
No, it's not scoria.
Oh, but it looks red.
no, it's not scoria. But I used that rock as an example. Why wasn't that 40, 50 years ago removed for road widening? Because it was a burial marker,
Yes, it
of
was.
which the more modern Urupā is.
Yes.
And never mind, it could have had burials on both sides. So I used Waitanui rock as an example
Yes.
to say that one. That's the Waimahana Marae.
Which one?
Waimahana, that person, that Uru we spoke to, he's the chairman of the marae we just gone past.
Yes.
It's Matarai.
Whaoa.
Ancient graves back on this farm here. I'm still trying to get the locals and the new owner and that cooperation for the importance of it, some features around it. So that's just another. So that's just another one. That goes the old Haki Road. Piri Road's it's a stream that marks it, goes past the marae there. I mean, anywhere you can take me to in lands far and wide, too far a time not, I've got issues with. But can I get any of the issues even taken notice of by the people living there?
At the top of this rise, Jeffrey, there is a place to overtake this guy. Hopefully he will pull over a little bit so you can whiz through. Sort of like a passing. There we go.
Oh, it's a double yellow line.
I've cleared all that land there and they're going to put all glass houses, hot houses,
Really?
a geothermal connection and, tomatoes and the whole lot.
Is it a Māori trust doing it or?
Completely Māori owned land, 100% Māori owned land and the Māori Trust. That's all part of the groups I work with. So they asked me the okay for that. We're going to have a relocation on the marae site. That was one of the considerations. That's why I could point knowledgeably and talk about it with the kamata and that we've had years ago in the past for other issues on the same land. And all this here is Crown land, or Crown land on both sides, and that's where Wairaki Pastoral have got it for farm conversion from pine trees. This had several harvests, so the land is mostly pumice, and right back from the 1930s it's had pine tree plantings and harvestings and plantings and harvestings. So it has been quite modified in the past.
Must be quite poor the soil then.
Poor soil, ideal for pines, and they took me with a big machine and the pride and joy to demonstrate how they could get a mature pine tree, cut the base and lot of these trees near maturity and half matured, just cut down to waste and chipped for this then to quickly sow over, a bit of fertiliser to put it in instant farm conversion. So I had to advise on water catchments all around between the demand for the power company and their needs and what they wanted or required for water for the farms there. Another one in the distance is a new power station in a steam in the distance, and that's called Ngati So the steam in the distance is Ngati geothermal station.
We've been there with Dominic at that time, that was Ngati.
Did we come this far out and with our...
No, it was over there.
Oh.
That's the contact energy field, Whaitaka energy fields there, right?
No, that's not Wairaki. That's Ngati Ngati is
Separate.
the hill behind it is called Waka Papataringa. Waka, and there are 2 or 3 names in the area, including one at Rainbow Mountain with the name Waka Papataringa, and that hill behind is Waka Papataringa. At the foot of them is Ngati Springs, and it's a springs at the and Tutukau Road goes behind it to Rakikrako, and that's where it's called a geothermal power station, or the site for geothermal power station, and that's why I had to get an assessment for the approve the location of that, and I had no less than 6 urupa defined and set aside in my report for the power station. And before that, been all pine forests, and then the trick was to get the urupa set aside from the farm conversion. And it's been a long battle, because originally I was dealing with Tahu forests, and they sold all their interests out to Fletcher Challenge. Fletcher Challenge ignored and bulldozed all the urupa signs down, cut all the protective trees, and knocked down all the fences marking the urupa. So much for Maori in recorded sites and Maori sites and that. So name me anyone, say, oh, they're responsible, I can give a negative on the whole lot of them. And it was one of those that I was with Taxi Kapua that time. The bridge was just one of the ones we identified to rebury bones had been unearthed. And nowadays, thanks to Fletchers and the contractors who ignored the signs that were part of their planning maps, flattened the whole lot. I still can't find, never found what happened to concrete slab on the place. So it doesn't cost anyone anything to leave marked, fetched and planted around urupa, but you've got this mentality between contractors that think it's a joke to come across the Maori side. Here could have been land banked or put in claim because it was all Crown land.
And why wasn't it?
They could have claimed it. But no, Kaingara, they had the idea. Claim Kaingara, claim this, and grab 2 land court blocks for land banking. What's it done? As I say, if I had a say, it would have been not the little bit they've got now, and be moaning, oh, we had this, we had that, and there's a chance to get everything. Much of that. Well, I'm going back to about 1980s, 1990s, and a lot of this came up since then.
progress.
Only knows the archaeologist that did it was Jared O'Regan. You've been misled. You're completely. Don't even bother going and asking questions and getting misinformation. You're being fed wrong people, misinformation,
Oh my
100%. And it was Jared O'Regan.
Keep
I've got
going.
photos of him excavating in there.
God,
It was Jared. This is why you're being misled by incompetent people that should change their name, go voluntarily overseas for 10 years and come back apologising for their ignorance and the misleading ways.
Straight ahead and turn right at the intersection, Jeffrey, and then left onto Birch Street.
Are you slowly getting how your information you're getting by certain people are 100% deceiving? And there's either something wrong with them, or they're deliberately deceiving, or they genuinely believe
The rhetoric.
People will believe what they want to at the end of the day, what suits them to.
And as I say, the workers come to me and said, Terry, it's exactly where you pointed out to us before we start our work, with those 17k exactly, not maybe somewhere vaguely, that these things were found.
Then pick it up again.
Oh.
Okay.
Wait. I think that looks like kokowai from the early 16th century. Just a moment. Yes, by Jove.
And did we see a seagull fly over?
Yeah.